In today's video, I will explain 10 quite surprising causes of sugar cravings and why it's so hard to say no to sweets. Because 95% of the time, it's not about your willpower, but there are actual imbalances in your body that make you crave sugar. And once you understand what is causing your sugar cravings, you can be more in control of it, make more conscious decisions, and achieve your health or fitness goals faster. So in terms of what causes sugar cravings, I like to break it down into 3 categories: physical causes of sugar cravings, emotional causes of sugar cravings like stress, and the last one, habits. So let's start with the most obvious ones, nutrient deficiencies. But later we will dive into more interesting ones, so stay with me. Chromium, magnesium, and zinc are 3 big common deficiencies. Also, what you need to know is when you overconsume on sugar on regular basis, you gradually deplete your body from zinc. So that can create a bit of vicious cycle at some point. Sugar depleting zinc and lack of zinc causing more sugar craving. Then other minerals also linked with sugar cravings are iodine, manganese, and B vitamins. If you are deficient in any of those, lack of them can make your sugar cravings worse. You can do a test to check your minerals and vitamins, which is of course the most accurate way, but also there are certain signs and signals that can give you some insights. For example, white spots on your nail can be a sign you are lacking zinc. Eye twitching or muscle cramps can be a sign of magnesium deficiency. If you crave sugar, especially after a meal, that's a strong indication that your digestion is off. So of course, if your body struggles with something, it wants more energy. And the quickest and easiest source of energy is unfortunately sugar. Sometimes, if you also ate too much, you can experience sugar cravings after a meal. So that's something to keep in mind too. Then the third, maybe not so obvious as well, your diet, pH, and food additives. If you consume too much of acidic foods like meat, dairy, and grains, and not balance it with more alkalizing foods like greens, fruits, and veggies, it can increase your sugar craving. Also, food additives. Unfortunately, lots of regular snacks from supermarkets are packed with additives, and even though seemingly healthy snacks usually include some kind of sweeteners, and both can increase your sugar cravings too. Next one, hormone imbalances. So as a hormone nutritionist, of course, like my favorite one. And this one is pretty broad category. But to keep it practical, how do you know if you have hormone imbalance? For women, for example, period is a great way to assess your hormone health without doing hormone tests. If you experience, for example, painful periods or heavy periods, feel more on edge or anxious just before your period or even during ovulation, also if you experience severe pre-period bloating, these are signs that something is off. Usually it has to do with your estrogen-progesterone balance. Then weight gain or fat gain. If you struggle with losing weight or fat despite being in calorie deficit, eating healthy, and even exercising, that's also another strong indication that hormones like cortisol, insulin, or thyroid may be out of balance. Next one, dehydration. Quite interesting one too. It's quite easy to mistake being thirsty with being hungry. So just have a look how much water you drink a day, and also make sure you add a pinch of Himalayan salt to your water, because that helps to get the water into your cell and improve hydration. Otherwise, the water can just pass through your system, so you can drink a lot but still being dehydrated. Then gut dysbiosis and candida. Overall, imbalance between your good and bad bacteria sets you on a path of more sugar craving. But candida is known in particular to cause stubborn sugar cravings. Candida is basically the type of the yeast usually resulting from past high sugar intake or unhealthy diet. Signs of candida can really vary, from fungal gnat, thrush, dandruff to fatigue and bloating. It's a really wide spectrum of how candida can show up, so it's definitely something you want to consider, but doing the stool test or blood test is the best way to confirm that. Next one, lack of sleep. A huge factor if it comes to sugar cravings. Not sleeping enough or lack of restful deep sleep can cause the body to release more cortisol during the day. More cortisol means more sugar cravings, broadly speaking. The good thing about sleep though is it's quite easy to recognize and tell whether you had a good night's sleep or not. But using one of the fitness tracker can be also helpful and give you a bit of more detailed breakdown of your sleep. I use, for example, Oura Ring to get insights about my sleep. Next one, excess exercise. That's something I noticed in myself a lot. There was a period when I didn't balance pretty intense trainings with the right diet and sleep, and I could clearly see my body craving way more carbs and sugar. Exercise spikes your cortisol, which is completely normal. But if your cortisol stays longer in your system than it should, then it can contribute to your sugar cravings. Also, what's important to remember, exercise depletes you from iodine and chromium and can disrupt your gut too. So if you don't have adequate diet to replenish all the nutrients and probiotics, excess exercise can also contribute to sugar cravings that way. The second category is stress and emotional causes of sugar craving. So that's something you definitely don't want to ignore, because stress is a huge factor and something a lot of people may not even realize, because we are kind of used to living a busy, stressful lives nowadays, rushing from one thing to another, and also how we think and react to day-to-day situations can impact cortisol release, the stress hormone. And here is quite interesting personal experiment I've done with my partner. He's a high achiever, working a lot and super resilient. I could tell that most of the day he spends in his flight or fight mode and constantly pumps cortisol into his system. But he was like, nah, I'm not stressed. So we ordered Oura Ring to track stress, but also few other metrics. What was really interesting with Oura was this. One day we decided to spend the whole morning together and afternoon as well. We woke up, we went for a coffee, chatted a bit, went for a walk, and then for a lunch. So pretty chilled day. But our stress responses were completely different. I spent 15 minutes in a stress zone according to the Oura Ring, and he has spent 3 hours and 15 minutes in a stress zone. And that only shows how often we don't feel stressed, but on the physiological level, our body releases cortisol, the stress hormone. And the problem with cortisol is that cortisol will trigger your sugar cravings directly, because our body thinks we are in danger. Unfortunately, our brain cannot tell the difference between actual danger and danger created by our thoughts and beliefs. So if your brain detects any cue of potential danger or emotional discomfort, it has two options: fight or flight. And in both cases, it needs that extra energy. Guess what? Sugar is unfortunately the simplest and quickest source of energy. And that's why also why sugar cravings are so common when we are stressed. And apart from that, as I said earlier, stress also depletes you from like lots of other nutrients, causing all of the physical imbalances I explained in the first part of the video. So stress is really something you want to take a look if you struggle with sugar cravings. And then the last category, habits. So here you want to be really honest with yourself and explore different scenarios when you crave sugar or fall into having sugary foods. Is it more out of habit, or is there some stronger force behind it, like some actual physical imbalance or the stress I described? For example, back in the days, I couldn't imagine morning without coffee and chocolate. But when I actually started to analyze, I discovered that if I skip chocolate, I'm simply hungry. So of course, coffee and chocolate was part of my morning ritual. Also, what was going underneath, it was me simply being hungry. And when I started having a proper breakfast and then coffee, I didn't feel this need for the chocolate anymore. So this is of course just example. Another habit situation that can make us eating more sugar than we want is, for example, the day when we were super busy or simply we didn't do anything that was enjoyable or rewarding or like fulfilling. Then at the end of the day, we may feel like, oh, I had like really tough day, I really need something comforting, enjoyable. And that's often unfortunately makes us to reach for like the sugar, even though sugar of course is not the only way to satisfy our reward part of the day, but unfortunately that's something that is quite common. So if you see that's the case for you, you also want to think about and kind of explore what's the different way how I can sweeten up my day so I need less sugar in the day, in the evening, or overall. And in the next video, I will share with you 3 proven steps how to overcome sugar cravings. So if you tried everything to quit the bad sugars and overcome the sugar cravings, but nothing really works, subscribe and stay tuned, because what I'm gonna share with you in next video really works.